I'll have you begin by setting up a ramp at the back of your mat. So you'll need a block way at the back of your mat, and then you're going to set one end of the bolster on the block, and the other end of the bolster is actually going to be mid-mat, and you're going to sit in front of it. So your rear end is going to be pressed up against the low side of that ramp. And you'll push down into the corner of the bolster. So as you lay down, your sacrum can take over that pressure against the low side. Your feet flat on the floor and your head resting on the bolster. Let your arms open out to the sides, but only about 45 degrees. That's far enough. And with your feet flat, go ahead and walk them out to the long edges of the mat. And feel free to fidget a little bit side to side until you feel that your neck is relaxed, your shoulder blades are in an optimal position for your shoulders to soften to either side of the bolster. And immediately as you begin to breathe here, you may notice that things have changed. And it might be easiest for you to breathe into your ribs, especially into those upper ribs. So you'll be feeling some expansion in the heart space. And as you begin to tune in with the sensations of breathing into that lifted heart, see if you notice anything else there. Maybe you notice the beating of your heart. Maybe you notice sensations of pressure, stretch, or release. And then keeping your attention on the rib cage, the lungs, and the heart itself. Press down into your feet. Lift and shift your hips a little bit to the left. So the hips are going to shift a little to the left. Your back is still well onto that bolster. And inhale here with your hips to the left, your knees pointing up. Exhale. Drop your two knees over to the right. Still with the mind trained on that heart space, the ribs, the lungs. And then inhale, bring the knees back to the middle. Feel that expansion of the chest and therefore the pneumatic pressure in the chest cavity. Exhale to the right, and you'll feel that pressure is released in the absence of the air in the lungs, and especially maybe the left side of your chest may relax. Inhaling, knees center. Feel that expansion, that light pressure. Exhale, releasing, drop the knees to the right. I'll have you do a few more of these. So inhaling, bring the knees up. Exhaling, soften as the knees drop to the right. And you may find, like I do, when you windshield wiper, that your butt starts to slide away from the bolster. So occasionally you might have to squinch yourself back up on there. So often in the practice of the yoga postures, the yoga asana, we talk about opening the heart, which usually connotates some kind of lifting, expanding, opening. And that denotes somehow that a closed heart is bad or wrong, not nearly as virtuous as an open heart. So for the next 3, as you exhale and you allow the left side of the chest to soften, Allow yourself to close in a little bit, just in your awareness. Feeling yourself touch or tap into that vulnerable, tender heart. If it weren't so tender, it wouldn't need so much armor around it, would it? The sternum, the ribs. Tapping into that tenderness of the heart. And the next time your knees are over to the right, this might be the time you shimmy your butt back to the bolster. You're going to keep your knees to the right. Sometimes it's a little yucky on the left knee and you need to put something under it. Sometimes you can just bring your right heel under your knee. And the feet are still very wide on the mat. That will help. So as you breathe in, feel the expansion, but in no way should you press or strive to open. Rather, let's focus on that tenderness, that softness in the heart space. We'll take just about a minute, maybe slightly more in this windshield wiper variation. In no way striving to open the ribs. Instead, meditate on the exhale, the release, the softness, the acceptance. And maybe you can use those exhales to explore different regions of the heart space that maybe you hadn't been able to attend to yet. And sometimes you'll encounter some hardness, some stiffness. And sometimes you'll encounter vulnerability. And can you allow yourself to be open to both? Not rushing to change or fix. I think one of the most important aspects of compassion is first the ability to acknowledge the right of a thing to exist. Let's take one more breath here. And then bring your left arm along your left side and lay your forearm across your belly. As you roll over onto your right side, come up onto that right elbow, press up into your two hands, and stack your left thigh on top of your right thigh. So we're going to have a look at this bolster that's behind you now. So your two knees are pointed to the right, and you're going to slide your bolster so it is no longer longitudinal on your mat, but now latitudinal. So the short edges of the bolster are against the long edges of your yoga mat. Your top knee, that left knee, can you slide the left knee to point toward the front of your mat? So your legs are still almost in that windshield wiper position now. And with your hips smushed up against the bolster, your right hip smushed up against your bolster, drape your right side body over the bolster with your right arm not under your head, but in fact out in front of you, extended in front of you. So you can see the full length of the arm. And then the left arm is going to reach overhead. Maybe your palm comes to the floor. Maybe your palm comes to that block that's back there. I like to prop the block against my head and lay my arm on top of it. That's my preferred way to be in this crescent position. And feel free to fidget around until it's just right and you can lay comfortably. And again, we'll tap in to the exhale. To the exhale. And you'll feel the gentle, but in no way striving expansion of the in, especially into the left side lung, but especially the softening of the out, as if you could touch that tenderness, touch that softness in the heart. And as you explore with your breath, you may notice that there are places which feel very stiff, very resistant. Or maybe you discover you just can't access them. And it's okay. Remember, we acknowledge the right of a thing to exist because we understand that there are very valid reasons for it being the way that it is. That no entity is isolated. We're a product of experience, history. And one more time on your out, deep into that heart space, touch something. And then slide your left hand around in front of you. If you were using your block to prop your arm, you can just move it out of the way. And press down once again into both hands, this time looking toward the back of your mat. With your hands on the mat and pretty close together, they're not very organized back there. In fact, the right hand might be really heavy on the floor and the left hand not so much. If you need to shift your bolster so you can reach the floor, go ahead. And just a little bit, draw your heart forward, not like a whole cow pose or anything, right? Something a little milder. And on the exhale, go ahead and round as if you're going to take the cat from this weird asymmetrical position and allow the position to help you to close in, to access something, some softness. And then pressing the heart forward just a little. Not a heart opening practice today, a heart closing. And as you continue to access that softness, that tenderness, and you acknowledge the softness and the tenderness. Acknowledge the vulnerability. Have compassion. Let's do just one more. So just a little bit of lifting, definitely more attention paid to the closing. And the next time you've closed and your head is hanging, just breathe for a moment. Now, not into the front or into the left side, but into the back of the heart. And soften the back of the heart on the exhale. The inhale, not at all striving, not at all expanding. The exhale, softening the back of the heart. Last breath. And then walk your hands back to the left, just so you can come off of your wrist. That was a little time there, wasn't it? And then you're going to just take your block again and set it at the back of your mat on low setting. And set up your ramp like you did when you first began. So the high end of the bolster is away from you. You'll turn and set with your butt against the low side And use your hands to smush down the corner, and then let your sacrum smush down the corner as you come all the way back to your back with your feet flat on the floor. And just take a moment to notice the difference between the left and the right. What sensations or feelings may be present. And surrender to that softness. And your feet are as wide as your mat. Once again, push down into your feet, lift your hips away from the floor, and then shift them to the right. So you're a little funky on that bolster, but it'll make sense, right? Because as you drop your two knees to the left, this way you're not going to fall off the left side of the bolster, right? So that's the out. On the in, the knees come back to vertical. And we'll expand the right side of the chest. And on the out, you'll soften the right side of the chest, just letting it go. In my study of anatomy, I have been extremely fortunate to see these tissues, to have the opportunity to explore these layers and textures in the human body. And one thing that became very clear to me the first time I was in the lab was that there's no way you can experience the right side of the chest or the left side of the chest, the ribs or the sternum, without experiencing the lungs and the heart. Let's just do a few more, not at all striving to open, rather softening, surrendering, closing, touching that soft center, a place that you need to feel safe to access, need to feel secure. And the next time your two knees have dropped to the left, maybe before you do so, you're going to shimmy your butt back to the bolster. Go ahead and keep those knees dropped to the left and continue the soft inhale and the soft exhale. Just like we have to have light to have dark, we can't always be expanding. We can't always be opening, confronting, engaging. Those things don't exist without the ability to close, retreat, surrender. Then we touch something inside when we do that. A part of ourselves that we sort of have to shelter off when we're always engaging. And if you find that piece of yourself here in this practice, have compassion. Let's take one more breath. And then bring your right forearm across your ribs or your belly. And then roll over onto that left side. Press down into your two hands so that you can reorganize your bolster. So you're going to take the long edge of the bolster against your thigh, short edge of the bolster against the long edges of the mat. The block may or may not be necessary. Sometimes you have to rest your head on it. And then go ahead and point your right knee toward the front of your mat and drape your left side body over that bolster, please. Your left arm is reaching out in front of you. It's not under your head. It's reaching out in front of you so you can see the whole length of your arm. And your right arm sweeps up and overhead and just drapes across toward the floor. Again, maybe your head needs to be elevated. And if you're not using the block to elevate your head, maybe you want to create a little platform, a little ramp for the arm. And we breathe into that right side lung. Integral to the experience of the ribs is the experience of the lungs. The experience of the heart. And I know it can be a challenge, but try not to engage. Try not to confront. With each breath, move inside, explore there. For most of human history, it was thought that it was the heart, not the brain, that was the seat of consciousness. And when we change that philosophy, with Descartes especially, and of course we learned that the brain is the seat of consciousness, to some extent we divided the emotions from thinking. For some reason in the collective consciousness, emotions are still in the heart and thinking in the brain. Let's take one more breath in your crescent variation. Slide your right hand around in front of you. Push down into your hand, and then your left as well. You can just move your block out of the way. Your bolster too may need to move out of the way depending on how much clearance you have. Your hands are pretty close together, not at all organized. There's no need for your right hand to be as heavy as your left hand, not at all. And start by a mild drawing forward of the heart as you breathe in. And exhale, just soften. Draw that heart back, defending in its armor the emotions. And then drawing forward. Just a little, not too much, not too engaged. Exhale, draw the heart back. Softening. Surrender the heart into this defense. Drawing forward just a little. And then surrender. Not forever, right? Not defending the heart for forever, but we seem to think that we can engage all the time, that we can confront, that we can expand. But there's no expansion if there's not also closing. Let's do 3 more. There's no expansion if there's not also a retreat. And touching that soft center. Exploring it, acknowledging it, respecting it. Last time. And then you'll come to neutral. One more time, let's make a ramp. So setting the block on its low setting, taking one end of the bolster to the block. So the high side is away from you, your rear end is smushed up against the low side, push down the corner until your sacrum can do the work. Your arms out to the sides, maybe just 45 degrees. Probably not all the way. That's a little too confrontational for us today, right? And walk the soles of your feet together and let your knees open up wide for the butterfly pose. And again, we're often expanding here and lifting and confronting and working. How's about just soften? Retreat. Touch this softness in you. And as you continue to explore the sensations and feelings of this pose, this breath, this intent, have compassion. Within each of us is this soft, defenseless place. Yogi, I invite you to stay in this pose or move to Shavasana by extending your legs if you'd prefer. And stay as long as you're able. Namaste.